definition, terms of trade, short TOT, represents the value of exports in relation to imports. The result is a percentage number. The TOT helps by determine how healthy a country's economy is, but it can lead to misinterpretation because it only shows the relation between exports and imports. The TOT is mostly used to find out how a country's economy will change in relation of exports and imports. The result of a TOT calculation often is recorded in order to form an index. The TOT is influenced by many factors. Some can only be found in specific economic sectors and industries. The availability of resources has a drastic influence on the TOT. A great number of exported goods only can be achieved if there are enough resources. The size and quality of a good is important as well. A big good with high quality is more likely to make more profit than a small one with low quality. In order to calculate the TOT, you have to divide the export revenue by the import costs. The result is then multiplied by 100. If the value is below 100%, the imports are higher than the exports. Therefore, the country makes losses. If the value is greater than 100%, the export revenue is higher than the import cost. Therefore, the country makes profit. An increasing TOT can have a positive effect on domestic cost push inflation because the import price decreases in relation to export price. But this can lead to a decrease in export volumes, therefore the balance of payments worsens up. If the TOT decreases, the country has to export more in order to purchase the needed amount of goods.
The next topic is the Heckscher and Ohlin theory, which is the modern theory of international trade. The theory was given by two Swedish economists named Eli Heckscher and Bertil Ohlin. So let's have a closer look on the theory. The model is a theory in economics explaining that countries export what can be most efficiently produced. It is used to evaluate trade and the equilibrium of trade between two countries that have varying specialities. Emphasis is placed on the exportation of goods requiring factors of production that a country has in abundance and the importation of goods that the country cannot produce as effectively. In this case, country A has a lack of capital-intensive goods, so it has to import them from country B. Country B has a lack of labor-intensive goods, so it has to import them from country A. The assumptions of the model are as followed. A. Needs of citizens of the two countries are same. B. Transportation costs between the countries is zero. C. Factors of production are in both countries are immobile. D. Factors of production in both countries are not available in same proportion. In this model there are two countries named X and Y. Both countries produce with the factors of production, labor and capital, two goods, in this case mobile phones and clothes. The production technology and the taste of the consumers are identical in both countries. The only difference is the factor endowment. Country X has a lack in labor, but they have a lot of capital. In country Y, it is the other way around. The production of mobile phones is capital intensive. On the other hand, the production of textiles is labor intensive.
So in the following we're going to talk about the Leontief paradox theory. We're going to discuss what the theory is and resolve. So he was born on 9th and 5th August 1905 in Munich and died on 5th February 1999 in New York. He was a Russian-American scientist and received the Nobel Prize in 1973 in economics.
The USA was one of the most capital-abundant countries for this time. Therefore, one would expect, according to the HO theorem, that the USA would export capital-intensive goods and import labor-intensive goods. But by looking at these numbers from 1962, one can see that this is not the case. The import capital and therefore the capital goods that were imported were higher than the export of capital goods. Capital-intensive goods are buildings, machinery, equipment, vehicles, and tools that an organization uses to produce goods and services in order to produce consumer goods and goods for other businesses. Labor-intensive refers to process or industry that require a large amount of labor to produce its goods or services. The degree of labor intensivity is typically measured in production to the amount of capital required to produce the good or service. The higher the proportion of labor costs required, the more labor-intensive the business is. As you can see, these numbers are in conflict with the HO theory. Therefore, Leontief concluded that there has to be a third factor.
Leontief tried to explain this third factor with the labor productivity. He claimed US labor was far more productive than that of the countries from which US got its imports. Factors that influence the labor productivity are, for example, the level of general awareness of the workers attained by them on account of technological methods prevalent in the country, or the attitude of workers towards work, the intensity with which they work, and
it is possible that a capital-abundant country may have a shortage of some minerals and other important natural resources. The technologies involved in producing several minerals products like oil and natural gas are highly capital-intensive, and if they are being exported by an otherwise labor-abundant country, factor intensity tests shall reveal a Leontief paradox. Continuing with the last argument, we can also bring in the fact that US agriculture is a highly land and capital intensive activity. US have very big farms which are manned by extremely limited numbers of workers but huge volumes of machinery. In addition, US have been heavily subsidizing its agriculture and exporting and dominating world markets in agricultural products. Such situations make it difficult to assess the validity or otherwise the HO theorem.
The US was known for imposing heavy customs duties on its imports from labor-abundant developing countries, such as fabrics, handicrafts, carpets, and more, while producers of their import substitutes within US use capital-intensive technology. In recent years, US has adopted the stance of discouraging the import of certain goods produced with sweat labor, that is, labor earning low wages, and from countries which have poor labor standards. In contrast, imports from capital-abundant countries are subjected to much lower rates of tariff. Obviously, such a policy favors capital-intensive imports, discourages labor-intensive imports, and creates an artificial Leontief paradox.
One critic that you can say against the Leontief theory is that Leontief only looked at the imports and exports of the USA, which kind of invalidates his theory because he only looked at one country.